Hi, everyone. I'm Neal Katyal, and this is The New Normal, a digital salon where we talk about life in the age of COVID-19. Today, we're talking about voting, and we've got the two very best to talk about it with us. Marc Elias is a lawyer at Perkins Coie, one of my favorite law firms, and the firm that was my right hand during the Guantanamo litigation at the Supreme Court. Marc is the very best voting rights lawyer in the nation. Indeed, when I had the privilege of defending the Voting Rights Act in the Obama administration, everyone said, call this guy. He's been the general counsel of Hillary Clinton's campaign, John Kerry's campaign, but more than all of that, he's been an eloquent voice for the idea that everyone has a right to vote. Bradley Whitford is an actor extraordinaire, an Emmy Award-winning, in fact, actor. You remember him as Josh Lyman in The West Wing, and so much more. Studio 60, Brooklyn 99, Transparent, now Handmaid's Tale. And Bradley has spent much of the last decades getting people out to vote. He's recorded PSAs about it. He spoke about it. He's on the board of organizations. Indeed, both Bradley and Marc are on the board of Let America Vote, one of the preeminent voting rights organizations in this country. So first of all, I just want to know how both of you are holding up. You know, the past few days have been particularly tough. Not only are we in the midst of the pandemic, but our nation is mourning the tragic killing of George Floyd, tragic murder of George Floyd. And it can be really tough to watch that video and all of the things that have happened since, from rubber bullets to tear gas to the riots. So I'd like to just start by asking both of you, maybe I'll start with you, Bradley, you know, how have you been holding up in this painful time?
You know, it's like a Dante poem. You think you're at the bottom and there's another horrific level to go. You know, I am old enough. You know, I came into consciousness, I was born in 1959, and I came into consciousness when the public heroes of that my family really worshipped were getting slaughtered on television. And I'm from Madison, Wisconsin, and there was a lot of upheaval, and, you know, there were bombings at the Mass Science Resource Center. There were bombings at police stations. I mean, we've seen this before. What's terrifying about it is having, you know, a malignant narcissist at the helm who, it seems to me, is trying to create chaos, consciously or unconsciously, in order to run on law and order. And I find that really terrifying.
It's just profoundly sad. And it is a sad and tragic time in American history. And we lack the leadership from the White House that we have come to hope for and come to expect, even when presidents have addressed these difficult situations imperfectly. They have tried. For all of the profound disagreements I had with George W. Bush, and I had profound disagreement with George W. Bush, after 9/11, he tried. He took steps to try to make healing in America possible. And Donald Trump seems to revel in the divisions and the wounds festering and being infected, rather than in trying to heal them. So it's very troubling, very difficult.
What is so dangerous and unprecedented with this guy is it broke Clinton's heart. It broke Bush's heart. It broke Obama's heart that they couldn't unite us. And this guy just thrives on division. And it's really civically septic.
Bradley, I totally agree with that. It's not just a lack of leadership. It's that he's pouring kerosene onto the divisions and he's exacerbating them. And so you've got like that whole set of problems, which is a Trump, exacerbated set of problems. But you also have these really underlying issues in society, from systemic racism to economic opportunities and the like. and I guess one of my concerns, and I don't know how you all think about it, is, as we focus on Trump and, he does take up a lot of the oxygen, we forget a little bit, there's all this other stuff. There's mayors who are enabling police brutality and police chiefs and the like. And I don't know if you have any reactions to that, but I feel like there's kind of two important conversations to be had here.
I just did one of these family history things where I was following a branch of my family, and they came over in 1842 from Prussia, coming out of the same kind of groundwater as Marx and Hegel, to a country where they could have a say in the way that they were governed. And then the Civil War happened. And it turns out my great-great-grandfather was basically fighting not only to keep the Union together, but to get voting rights for African Americans. And we're dealing with the same thing. I live in Pasadena, California. I can go take a walk anytime. And an African American friend of mine says, "Oh, I get terrified every time I walk around Pasadena." Just because he's an African American walking, on the street.
And Neal, I think one of the pieces, though, that we need to focus on, given particularly your background and mine, is the role the courts play in this. Because the court, I oftentimes say this in the context of voting rights, but it's true in the case of criminal justice and policing and the like, is that, you hope the political branches can resolve these problems. Like in the first instance, creating fairer and juster laws is in the purview of mayors and city councils and Congress and presidents. But in the end, it's the role of the courts that when the political branches fail to protect people's rights, the courts are supposed to step in. And I think that we are witnessing across a whole range of issues, and this included among them a failure on the parts of our judiciary to really do the hard work that they have to do to constrain executive branch power, whether that executive branch power be the president or be a police chief, to protect citizens from unconstitutional and unlawful acts of their government.
Yeah, I think that's such an important point. I mean, I think about this all the time because the great thing about having a law degree is that piece of paper, if you pass the bar, you can go in to court and challenge a mayor, challenge a police chief, challenge a president. You don't have to be at the Perkins Coie's and Hogan Lovells of the world. You can do it no matter where, any lawyer can do it. It's an awesome power, but it depends on the power. It depends on the federal judges being willing to do their job and enforce the law. And I think you're raising a really important point. And I guess, Marc, do you see a kind of connection between the protests we're seeing now in the wake of the Floyd murder and attempts to disenfranchise African-American voters, which you've been working on for your whole life? I mean, it feels to me like one of the things, and Bradley's point a moment ago, I think gets at this, when people feel that they don't have a voice in the political system, then they turn to other things and yes, they've been patient, but that's a natural outgrowth of some of these suppression efforts, it seems to me, that's going on. I don't know if you have reactions to that.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I think that the fact is that Donald Trump is not saying the quiet part out loud; he's screaming it. And when you have the President of the United States telling people, "I'm not going to let you vote, and your vote won't count. And if you do vote, I'm going to say it's fraudulent, and I may investigate you." When you debase the voting process and you say, "We may not even have a functioning post office," so that people who try to vote by mail won't even be able to have their mail ballots go through the postal service. You are taking away one of the outlets that people have to try to effectuate change, right? The biggest lawful way to effectuate change is through the ballot box, right? You vote out of people who are passing laws you don't like, and you vote in people who are passing laws you do like. And the president has set upon for the last few months to denigrate voting and to disenfranchise voters at every turn. The Republican National Committee announced that they would spend $10 million in court fighting against voting rights. Then they doubled it to $20 million, and then just in the last few days, they said it'll be more than $20 million. I mean, just think about that for a second. A national political party is saying we are going to oppose voting rights. Like, that's our platform. Our platform is making voting harder and less available to people. And again, you're just left with thinking like, yeah, I know Republicans have been have been putting up voter suppression for years. I've been litigating against Republican voter suppression, as you say, for a long time. But it was never a stated goal of the Republican Party, right? And that's the difference that Trump has no shame, and therefore his party has no shame, and therefore they're willing to do or say anything.
Thanks for tuning in to The New Normal featuring Marc Elias and Bradley Whitford. Stay tuned in the next couple of days for segment 2. If you haven't already, subscribe to my YouTube channel and follow my Instagram and never miss a new update.